We all like to think we're in the driver's seat, right?
Right.
Making our own choices every day. But,
Mm.
how much of that is really us? Are we actually in control, or are we maybe being nudged a little?
That's the big question, isn't it? And it's exactly what we're digging into today.
Yeah, let's unpack this because we're diving into some really fascinating ideas from behavioral economics, stuff that suggests there are these subtle forces kind of guiding our decisions more than we think.
Exactly. Prepare for some real eye-openers. We're looking at why we make the choices we do, often in ways that aren't strictly, rational.
And we're using a lecture by Professor Makoto Ob from the University of Tokyo as our guide here, presented via Fermi-Manga University. So think of this as like your shortcut to getting why we pick A over B.
Yeah, the hidden drivers.
Exactly. We want those aha moments, but, without the dense academic jargon. Just clear, practical stuff.
We're essentially pulling back the curtain a bit on our own minds, looking at these little quirks that influence, well, everything from your grocery list to maybe even who you date.
Okay, so to give everyone a bit of a roadmap, we're going to walk through 9 key principles from Professor Abe's lecture. 9 core ideas from behavioral economics.
It might shift how you see your own choices. Maybe not completely change everything, but definitely add a new layer.
Right. So let's kick things off with the first one. The power of past memory. Sounds simple, but it's deep.
It really is. And it's something we often just don't register consciously. When you're looking at a menu or grabbing a snack, those choices often feel spontaneous.
Yeah, totally.
But they're frequently tied back to positive feelings or experiences you've had before. It's that comfort of the known pulling you back.
Okay, yeah, like always ordering the same thing at that one cafe
Right.
or buying the same brand of chips your whole life. It feels automatic, but you're saying it's really about those good memories tied to it.
Precisely. It's rooted in those past positive associations. And businesses know this. They absolutely work to create those lasting positive memories linked to their products.
Ah, right. They want to build that mental shortcut straight back to them.
Exactly. And Professor Abe mentioned a really striking example. McDonald's founder, Mr. Fujita.
Oh, yeah.
His insight was basically that our tastes are heavily influenced by what we eat before, say, age 12.
Wow, really? That early?
Yeah. So by targeting kids, creating those positive experiences with Happy Meals and whatnot, they're essentially aiming to cultivate customers for life. Because those early positive food memories, they stick.
So familiarity breeds choice, especially if it starts young. That's quite a strategy.
It's incredibly powerful. And that idea of familiarity links directly to our second principle, the lure of the familiar, just in a broader sense.
Okay, this one I feel like I see all the time. You buy something just because you've seen the ad like 100 times.
Yeah.
Or you see it online or people using it. I mean, I know I've definitely bought stuff because I recognize the celebrity endorsing it. You just trust it more somehow.
You do. There's a psychological reason for that. Familiarity creates a sense of, well, safety or trust. Even if it's totally superficial,
Right.
we tend to see things we recognize as more reliable than something totally new, even if we don't have any actual evidence for it.
So that could even apply to bigger things like choosing insurance or maybe even, I don't know, a medical treatment. You might lean towards the name you've heard of.
Absolutely. You might subconsciously favor the brand you've seen advertised, even if another less familiar option might actually be better suited for you on paper.
Wow.
So for businesses, the takeaway is obvious. Brand awareness is key. Just getting seen repeatedly creates that familiarity, that mental availability when you're making a choice.
It's like a slow, constant nudge towards their product.
Exactly. It subtly stimulates that desire just by being there.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Principle number 3. This one feels very human. The now versus later dilemma.
Ah, yes. The classic trade-off.
Like imagine someone offers you, say, 10,000 yen right now.
Yeah.
Or double that, 20,000, but you have to wait a whole year. Logically, waiting is better, right?
Yeah.
More money.
Mathematically, absolutely. But what do most people do?
Probably take the 10,000 now. I know I'd be tempted.
And that's what Professor Abe pointed out. We humans often have this bias towards immediate gratification. We tend to put a higher value on pleasure or rewards we can get right now.
It's that urge to spend your paycheck as soon as it hits your account.
Yeah.
Even if you know rent is due next week.
Exactly. It's the opposite of what psychologists call delayed gratification, the ability to wait for a larger reward.
You just want the good stuff now.
Often, yes. That immediate hit just feels stronger, more compelling than a potential future benefit. And speaking of things that feel compelling in the moment, that leads us to the next one. the sunk cost trap.
Oh, boy. Yeah. This one can be painful. It's a feeling, right? You've put so much time or money or effort into something, and it's clearly not going well, but you just can't stop because you feel like everything you already put in will be wasted.
Exactly. We see it everywhere. Think about mobile games with those gotcha mechanics. People keep pouring money in, hoping for that rare item.
Guilty. I have absolutely done that.
Or, sticking with a boring TV show just because you've already watched 3 seasons.
Yep, done that too. Okay, confession time. I probably spent like 30,000 yen on one of those mobile games once.
Wow.
Yeah. And the thought of just stopping and admitting that money was gone, it was weirdly hard.
That is a perfect example of the sunk cost effect in action. It's that mental block, I've come this far, I can't quit now, even when quitting is the rational move.
It applies to so much, right? Games, stocks, even just finishing a book you hate.
Definitely. So the practical advice here, Professor Abe suggested, is to try and set limits before you start.
Like an exit strategy?
Yeah, exactly. Decide beforehand how much you're willing to spend or how much time you'll invest and stick to it. That way your past investment doesn't dictate your future choices quite so much.
That's smart. Okay, let's pivot a bit. From costs to connections. Principle 5 is about making a lasting impression, specifically in dating.
Yes, this was an interesting application. How do you make a good enough impression on a first date to actually get a second one?
The eternal question.
Professor Abe broke it down into focusing on 3 key moments. The very beginning, the peak moment of the date, and the very end.
Okay, makes sense. First impressions count.
Hugely. A warm smile, a clear greeting, maybe dressing well. It sets the initial tone. You want that positive start.
Right. Know the landing. Or the takeoff, I guess. So what about this peak?
This is about creating one really memorable high point. It doesn't have to be huge. It could be sharing a great view, a moment of really connecting over conversation, genuine laughter, maybe even, a little spark.
Oh, okay. Something that stands out when they think back on it later.
Exactly. A distinct positive highlight. And then the farewell is just as crucial.
How so?
You want to end on a positive note. A polite goodbye, maybe walking them partway, offering a ride, just sincerely saying you had a good time. It leaves that final good taste.
So the idea is, even if the middle was just kind of okay,
Yeah.
a strong start, a memorable peak, and a smooth ending can make the whole experience feel positive in retrospect.
That's the psychology behind it. Professor Abe pointed out that we tend to remember experiences based on just a few key moments, especially the peak and the end.
That's called the peak end rule, isn't it?
Exactly. So managing those moments is key. And, this applies beyond dating, too. Think about business meetings, a professional opening, a clear high point or decision, and a courteous closing shape the whole perception.
Very useful. Okay, let's move on to how things are presented. Principle 6. The power of framing. How you say something matters a lot.
Oh, absolutely. This is a cornerstone of behavioral economics. The way information is presented can totally change how we react, even if the core facts are identical.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Professor Abe used a great one. Imagine a CEO tells employees, there's only a slim chance our company will survive. What happens?
Panic. Everyone updates their resume. Morale tanks.
Right. But what if that same CEO, facing the exact same dire situation, says, our company's chance of survival is not 0?
Okay, that sounds different. Maybe more hopeful, like there's still a fight to be had.
Precisely. The underlying reality hasn't changed, but the framing shifts the emotional response from despair to potentially determination. That's the framing effect.
It really shows how much our perception is shaped by language. Any other examples?
Yeah, think about product labels. Does chlorine 1 milligram sound as impressive as taurine 1,000 milligram?
No way, the 1,000 milligrams sounds much more potent, even though it's the same amount.
Exactly. Or pricing. Why do stores price things at 1980 instead of 2000?
Because 1980 just feels significantly cheaper. That one at the front makes a huge difference psychologically.
It does. So the takeaway is clear. If you want to influence perception, you need to be really thoughtful about how you frame your message.
Communication is everything. Okay, principle 7. This one's about where our attention goes. Selective attention or the cocktail party effect.
Ah, yes, a classic. You're in a crowded, noisy room, a party, a cafe. Lots of conversations happening, general buzz, but suddenly you hear someone mention your name or your favorite hobby or that game you love.
Boom, your ears just zoom in on that one conversation, right?
Yeah.
Everything else fades away.
That's exactly the effect. You can filter out all the surrounding noise and focus intensely on that one thread that's relevant to you.
How does our brain do that?
Well, Professor Abe explained it as a filtering mechanism. Our brain has to sort through a ton of sensory input, and it prioritizes what seems important or relevant to us, filtering out the rest to avoid overload.
So we're kind of wired to only notice what we're already interested in.
To a large extent, yes. It means we tend to see what aligns with our goals or interests. If you're really focused on getting rich, you'll notice financial news everywhere, but might completely miss articles about healthy eating.
And vice versa for someone on a diet. Our interests create our reality, in a way.
In terms of what we pay attention to, yes. It shapes the information we take in.
Okay, we're almost there. Principle number 8. This one feels really fundamental. Loss aversion.
It really is. This is a big one. The basic idea is that the pain of losing something feels psychologically stronger, more intense, than the pleasure of gaining something of the same value.
Okay, explain that. Like, losing $50 feels worse than finding $50 feels good.
Pretty much, yeah. Professor Abe used the example of a choice. Option A is you get a guaranteed 1 million yen. Option B is a 50-50 coin flip. Heads, you get 2 million yen. Tails, you get nothing.
Okay, the expected value of option B is technically the same 1 million, but that risk of getting nothing.
Exactly. Most people, research shows, will choose the guaranteed 1 million. The fear of losing out, of getting zero, is more powerful than the potential excitement of doubling their money.
That makes intuitive sense. Losing just stings more. Losing 10,000 yen definitely feels worse than the buzz of finding 10,000 yen.
The negative impact is just heavier for most people. But interestingly, there's a potential exception Professor Abe touched on.
Oh.
People who are in really difficult situations, maybe deep in debt, very few savings, they might actually become more risk-seeking.
How so?
Well, think about buying lottery tickets. For someone struggling, the potential upside of a huge win might feel like the only way out, making the fear of losing the small cost of the ticket less significant. They might feel they have less to lose, relatively speaking.
Ah, okay. So when you feel like you're already in a state of loss or disadvantage, the potential big gain becomes more attractive than protecting the little you have.
It can shift the calculation, yes. The psychological dynamics change when people feel desperate.
Fascinating stuff. Okay, so let's just quickly run through those 9 principles again, a quick recap.
Sure. So, number 1, choosing based on past positive memories. 2, buying what's familiar because we've seen it before. 3, prioritizing rewards we can get right now.
4, that sunk cost trap, avoiding admitting wasted effort. 5, the importance of first impressions, peaks, and endings, especially in making connections.
6, how framing changes everything. 7, selective attention, the cocktail party effect, seeing what interests us. And finally, 8, loss aversion, fearing loss more than desiring gain.
Wow. Laid out like that, it's really eye-opening how much is going on beneath the surface of our choices.
It really is. It shows how many of our decisions, the ones that feel so personal and independent, are actually shaped by these pretty predictable psychological tendencies.
And as Professor Abe's lecture implied, businesses and marketers are often very aware of these principles and use them strategically.
Absolutely. Understanding these can be a kind of superpower, whether you're a consumer or in business.
So the final thought for you, the learner, listening in, now that you know about these hidden currents, these influences, how does that change things? How might you look at your own decisions or even the world around you a bit differently now?
Yeah, what will you be more conscious of? Maybe start watching for these principles playing out in your own day-to-day life.
You might be surprised just how often you spot them.